Australian stocks fall as Prime Minister Albanese returns to power amid global trade uncertainty. President Trump imposes a controversial 100% tariff on movies produced outside the US. And we look at the future of tech as Türkiye wraps up its latest edition of TEKNOFEST. Hello, I'm Taiba Aydin with the latest business and finance news here on TRT World. Anthony Albanese has been re-elected as Australia's Prime Minister following a landslide election victory. His Labour Party is expected to end up with at least 85 seats, well over twice as many as the right-wing opposition coalition. Donald Trump congratulated him over the phone, but his new term comes amid a sluggish economy and rising global trade tensions. Emre Boz reports.
A victory salute as Anthony Albanese claims his spot as Australia's Prime Minister once again. He's the first Australian leader to win a second term in more than 2 decades.
And with pride and purpose, optimism and determination, with faith in the fair go and faith in each other, we return to the work of building Australia's future. In this time of global uncertainty, Australians have chosen optimism and determination.
But the road to that future is not going to be easy. Australia's economic growth, though rising last year, started from a very low base of 0.2% and reached just 0.6%. One of the reasons for the slow growth is high interest rates. They peaked at 4.35% in November 2023, dipping only slightly to 4.1% in February. The Reserve Bank hopes to rein in any demand-driven inflation. Inflation in the country fell from 3.8% in the second quarter last year to 2.4% by the first quarter of 2025. Despite this, the figure is still above the bank's target of 2%. Keeping rates high is having negative effects on the economy. High rates mean high costs of borrowing. Market researchers at Roy Morgan say almost a third of mortgage holders are now experiencing difficulty making repayments. And as more people get into debt, consumer spending goes down. Spending is key to ensuring high production in the economy. To make matters worse, global trade is more uncertain as Donald Trump is determined to impose his global tariffs. So for Australia's reigning Prime Minister, it looks like it's going to be a challenging road ahead. Emre Boz, TRT World.
Meanwhile, Australian stocks fell on Monday after Albanese's victory, while most Asian markets were closed for holidays. Albanese is the country's first Prime Minister to secure a second consecutive term in 21 years, indicating Australians' desire for policy continuity amid an uncertain global economic outlook. The Australian dollar climbed by 0.3% against the greenback to 64 cents, its highest level in nearly 5 months. The government is focused on addressing cost of living pressures and navigating global trade tensions. US President Donald Trump has announced a controversial 100% tariff on movies produced outside of the United States, claiming that the domestic film industry is facing a crisis. This new measure aims to protect American filmmakers from foreign competition, which Trump describes as a national security threat. Film and television production in Los Angeles has plummeted by nearly 40% over the last decade, with an estimated global spending of $248 billion on content production by 2025. The US risks losing a significant share of this market. Experts warn that retaliation from other countries could severely impact the American film industry. And now a quick look at some of the other top business stories from around the world. China is urging exporters to focus on domestic sales as tariffs hit overseas demand, which could deepen deflation risks. For the full year of 2025, Goldman Sachs forecasts retail inflation to fall to 0%, with wholesale prices declining by 1.6%. Despite calls for stimulus, Beijing is likely to hold off on major fiscal measures for the foreseeable future. US oil prices took another hit on Monday, falling by 4%, bringing the total drop this year to 20%. This follows a tough April, which saw the steepest monthly decline since 2021. The latest decline comes as OPEC Plus moves to increase production for a second straight month, just as President Trump's tariffs stoke fears of a global slowdown. Falling jet fuel prices are bringing much-needed relief to the airline industry, boosting optimism for better profitability. Shares of Australia's Qantas Airways climbed more than 5% on Monday, hitting a one-month high. This comes after Barclays lowered its Brent oil price forecast by $4 for 2025 to 2026. And as the US Federal Reserve prepares to announce its interest rate decision this week, President Donald Trump once again urged Chair Jerome Powell to cut the benchmark rate. But he also clarified that he has no intention of replacing Powell before his term ends in 2026. Despite growing recession concerns, the central bank is now expected to hold rates steady. Still ahead on the programme, we look at the landmark deal between the US and Ukraine to tap into Kyiv's rich mineral reserves. But some Ukrainians are asking who really stands to benefit. More on that after the break. Welcome back. Let's go to Sydney now, where Mark Humphrey Jenner joins us. He's an Associate Professor of Finance at the University of New South Wales Business School. Hi there, Mark. Now, Prime Minister Albanese has secured a historic second term. What do you think sealed the deal for voters?
Firstly, thanks for having me. And it's been an interesting, there's been an interesting election campaign. And there's probably not just one factor that really contributed to it, rather it's a combination of several things. So part of it was indeed that Anthony Albanese ran a rather dishonest campaign. There were a lot of lies about the opposition leader, which the opposition, for their part, failed to rebut effectively, meaning that the current government was able to frame how the opposition was presented. Not only that, the opposition seemed to backflip a bit between policies, which meant that voters didn't have a good grasp of what exactly the opposition stood for, and the policies they did put forward, at least a lot of the ones that were presented, were not very popular, which included effectively trying to, or at least perceived, ban on work from home for public servants, and the implication that that would also extend out broadly. And in addition, you've got the nuclear power policy that the opposition was attempting to bring in that wasn't super popular, or at least it was complex enough that it became unpopular. So all of these factors contributed to allow Peter Dutton to appear to be rather unpalatable to voters and enable the current government to shape the narrative, hence enabling them to get re-elected.
And what has Albanese promised for this term?
It's been an interesting one. So some of the promises are perhaps already not going to come true. So one of them, for example, is a promise of tax cuts for all Australians, which from the get-go actually cannot be met. Now, the nature of that promise is a reduction in the lowest marginal tax rate from 16% to 14%. The reason that can't actually be met and is already, I guess, broken from the factory is they're also, on the other hand, trying to increase taxes on superannuation funds and impose a tax on unrealized capital gains, which is tautologically a tax hike. However, they have promised tax cuts, although, like I've said, there are some issues with that. They've also promised additional renewable energy and have promised to reinstate and continue the ban on nuclear power, which Australia has. They've also made various cost of living promises, which include various things to do with healthcare and the ability or alleged ability to see a GP, a general practitioner, for less money, reducing university education debts, so that is the debt that a student would pay, various things along those lines. They've also promised some housing policies, such as enabling first home buyers to buy a house with only a 5% deposit, which is in fact an inherently good policy, effectively involves the government underwriting lenders' mortgage insurance, enabling people to get over one of those big issues with buying a house, which is the initial deposit. They still need to satisfy the servicing requirement, that is the ability to pay off the debt, but at least the deposit is dealt with. Now, those are some of the big ticket policy items they've brought in, but of course there are various other ones throughout the campaign as well.
Right. Meanwhile, inflation is falling, but consumer spending is down. Do you think the government is striking the right balance between cooling prices and supporting growth?
Well, so we're looking at inflation. Part of the issue with that is, well, that can be determined by global factors. And indeed, the Australian dollar is going to have a significant impact on that because that would affect the price of imports into Australia, hence inflation. Now, inflation could potentially moderate. Part of this is going to come down to the fact that house prices and rents have consistently risen for the past few years. And there's only so high those can actually rise, meaning that almost tautologically, that inflation will start to moderate a bit. One of the areas that will become a concern, however, is energy prices, because part of the reason energy prices or inflation, had moderated, and this isn't the entire reason, but part of the reason, had been government subsidies offsetting energy prices. Now, those subsidies are temporary and will unwind, whereupon inflation will start to go back up. So it's something we will need to watch out for. But overall, inflation has moderated. It's heading back within the Reserve Bank's target band, which means the Reserve Bank might have more confidence cutting rates at the next meeting in late May.
Right, Mark Humphrey Jenner from the University of New South Wales Business School, thank you very much for being with us. Turkiye's premier aerospace and technology event TEKNOFEST has wrapped up its latest edition, this time in the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. The festival drew crowds from across the region, highlighting Turkiye's growing tech ambitions. Naim Öngören has more.
A display of aerial acrobatics and high-tech marvels on the final morning of TEKNOFEST, as 4 days showcasing innovation, competition and inspiration came to a close in Lefkoşa. Hosted for the first time in the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, this year's edition showed off cutting-edge technologies in aviation, robotics, AI and more.
As the Lefkoşa science team, we came here representing our 6 workshops. We are a technology workshop. We help children control the robots with simple systems they've never seen at school through simple robotic coding. Children are very happy to participate in these events. As you can see, there is intense interest.
The festival drew massive crowds. Organizers say hundreds of thousands of visitors poured into the event grounds, from students and families to tech entrepreneurs. The chairman of TEKNOFEST, Selçuk Bayraktar, praised the high turnout and the energy, saying the enthusiasm of young people was the true highlight.
TEKNOFEST için yola çıkarken
We had a dream when we set out for TEKNOFEST that the children of these lands could one day develop their own aircraft, satellites and artificial intelligence technology. Today at TEKNOFEST, young people test their rockets, unmanned aerial vehicles and software. This festival is where 47,000 youth take part in technology competitions. It is the strongest sign of the faith and passion of Turkish Cypriots.
From drone races to rocket building contests, participants had the chance to both compete and collaborate, turning ideas into action. And this year's location had special symbolic value. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan emphasized the importance of holding the festival in the TRNC, both to encourage young innovators on the island and to strengthen the bonds between the two nations.
It has a special meaning for us that these works, which have great efforts and ideas behind them, are exhibited in TRNC. This is not just a festival, but also a determined step taken by one nation and 2 states towards the common future of one heart. I would like to specifically express this fact here. We, as the Turkish nation and Turkish Cypriots, are homeowners in these lands.
As the final air show took place in the skies over Lefkoşa, TEKNOFEST once again proved why it's more than a festival, it's a launchpad for Turkiye's tech future. By bringing together technology, talent and national solidarity on the soil of TRNC, TEKNOFEST 2025 marked another significant step in Turkiye's vision for a shared and tech-driven future. Naim Öngören, TRT World, Lefkoşa.
And for more on this, we're joined by Şuay Nilhan Açıkalın, Associate Professor of International Relations at Ankara Hacı Bayram Veli University. Good to have you on the programme with us, Şuay. Now, TEKNOFEST this year was packed with innovation. What does this tell us about Turkey's growing ambitions in the global tech race?
Thank you very much. I had a personal chance to observe this TEKNOFEST in Lefkoşa this year, and I can say that this is the 11th of the TEKNOFEST within the 8th year, and through the 8th year, Turkey is clearly developed a new ecosystem that developed by the TEKNOFEST and the people who is participating in this way. And if you look over the some ranked like the innovation index, Turkey has been increasing position within the both TEKNOFEST and the ecosystem that developed by the TEKNOFEST from the 16th to right now 25 in general sense of the world. And it's this is a kind of the position that triggered the Turkey's position in the global tech race, not only in the one side, but is a multidimensional perspective to be find a proper position with the strong young population, and it is innovative spirit.
Right, and with thousands of youth participating in robotics, AI and drone competitions, how is this shaping the next generation of engineers and innovators?
It's one important anecdote from the TRNC TEKNOFEST, because it's the first TEKNOFEST. We will see the different participants and the competitors, including the pupils, and you will see the students from the K-12 to doctoral level. So it is a very general and the broad perspective to bring the innovators in a very small age till the very advanced level. And it also shows that how the new generation will be actively part of the entrepreneurship and not only the tech race, but it's also that kind of the spirit, the work for the technology, Türkiye and its future.
And President Erdogan called it a determined step for unity and progress. So how much of tech development today is tied to national identity?
Well, it is a kind of the TEKNOFEST spirit, and I think President Erdogan also touched upon in the Lefkoşa speech that this is not only the technology festival, but it's a kind of the symbol that brings all people, not only in the Cyprus, but also in the Türkiye as well, in every TEKNOFEST, to show that the solidarity towards our future, more stronger, more better future that equip with the stronger younger generation. And it's also created a kind of a bonding between the people, doesn't matter their age, religion, and their position in the society.
And what foundations is Türkiye laying at the moment to become a major tech hub in the next decade?
First, the human resources that has been learning from very young age till the late age. It's a very important that the cultivating the human resources part. Secondly, of course, as I mentioned, that the TEKNOFEST has been also arranging a different group and bringing stakeholders in those kind of the festivals, created a kind of the network, not only in the national level, but also international level. So these multidimensional approach of the Türkiye that in kind of the technology race and other related fields and the sectors created a very stronger position for Turkey to fill the gap that very based on the justice that also President Erdogan and the Selçuk Bayraktar mentioned their own speech. Turkey working for the peace that through the high tech and the other technologies.
And what developments are we expected to see in the near future in the tech field for Türkiye?
Oh, wow, it's not an easy question. I'm expecting to, after the see even the 8-year-old children wants to show their innovation. I think there will be a high interest and a high tech increasing in terms of the successful projects, not only within the Turkey, but I'm expecting to see more famous, a very young scientist will be groundbreaking projects in not only the world, but also across the other countries.
Right, Professor Şahin Nilhan Açıkalan from the Ankara Hacı Bayram Veli University, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Russia says it has shot down 4 Ukrainian drones heading for Moscow. The attack reportedly forced a temporary halt to flights at one of the city's 5 airports. It comes as Ukraine's president says a ceasefire could be possible. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky made the comments during a visit to Prague. He urged allies to push Moscow harder for peace. And last week, Russian President Vladimir Putin offered a 3-day truce from May 9th to mark 80 years since the Soviet victory in World War II. But Zelensky called that symbolic and wants a full 30-day truce, the same proposal the US backed back in March.
We believe that a ceasefire is possible at any moment, even starting today, and should last for at least 30 days to give diplomacy a real chance. For example, in the past few days, they have been saying that they want some partial ceasefire. But you should know that the number of assaults these days was the highest in the past months. They conducted more than 200 assaults.
Meanwhile, the United States signed a landmark deal with Ukraine last week to jointly develop some of the country's vast mineral wealth, including key resources like lithium and titanium. The agreement gives Washington a direct stake in Ukraine's future, both economic and strategic, as the war with Russia continues. TRT World's Joel Flynn travelled to one of the sites at the heart of the deal and found not everyone is convinced it will bring benefits that they've been promised.
This is not the front line of the war in Ukraine. But this patch of ground and others like it hold the key to peace in the country's conflict with Russia. Somewhere underneath the ground here is thought to exist one of the biggest deposits of lithium in the whole of Europe. Now, there is no machinery or mining equipment here yet, but the United States hopes to change that with a deal that may mark a significant shift in the war. The deal for Ukraine's energy resource wealth was signed last week after months of negotiations. Despite earlier concerns, some have now hailed it as a marker of closer relations between Washington and Kiev. But many in Ukraine are skeptical, including people in the nearby village of Kapanki. We were told that only 50 people live here. Despite strong opinions among those we did talk to, few would speak to us on camera. But Valerie, the shopkeeper in the village, did.
We have seen what happens around other mines. Villages don't develop, the water disappears, roads get turned up by trucks and nobody repairs them. But if this helps bring peace, we can close our eyes to all that. Ending this terrible bloody war, that is the #1 goal for everyone in Ukraine.
Ukraine is believed to have vast mineral wealth. Very little of it has been exploited, leaving much potential but little benefit, especially for those living near resource deposit sites like Kapanki. It's left people disillusioned with the gap between promise and reality. The level of investment needed here is also stark, including the chalk and gravel roads that connect it. Yet not everyone is cynical. In Kiev, an expert on the deal insists it's a genuine partnership, not a giveaway.
This signed agreement is the first agreement which in the same time has a pretty direct mechanism signed in it, and at the same time it's not looking like a colonial deal or looting or something. That was a lot of work from a Ukrainian delegation to make it look like a business deal, and now how it looks like. And that's, on my opinion, that's the only way how it could work in the long run.
Ukrainians have heard promises before from Russia and from the West, and whilst it's too early to say exactly what the effect of this deal will be, here and across the country, Ukrainians will be waiting to see whether what's underneath the ground can stop the blood that's been spilled to protect it. Joel Flynn, TRT World in Kapanki in Ukraine.
And that's all your business news for now. Thanks for watching.